our focus on the next section of our notes is about specialized cells. You need to be able to list or provide examples of specialized cells in your body, identify what those cells do for you, and then indicate what would be some structures they would need in order for them to do those tasks or those jobs for you. And then we're also going to be talking about stem cells and what we mean by differentiation of these stem cells. So this is about 2/3 of the way through your notes, and this is where we're going to talk about cells in the body that are specialized. Here's what I mean by specialized. When I look at students, I think that you guys are unspecialized students. You have not decided what career you're going to major in, or you haven't become accountants or pediatricians or construction managers yet. You haven't become specialized. You're undecided. Now, whenever you were developing, and you were at one time about 16 years ago, you were just a big mass of cells. Those cells hadn't specialized either. And those cells are called stem cells. This diagram right here shows you that stem cells have the ability to turn into the different types of cells in the body. They become specialized when they receive certain signals to change. Whenever cells become specialized, we have another name for that. We can say that the cells are differentiating. So stem cells can differentiate. So someday you're going to differentiate from other people in this class. You're going to choose what you're going to grow up to be. And that's kind of what stem cells are doing, even though they don't have a choice. They're just receiving chemical signals, and that is going to determine whether they are going to turn into red blood cells or white blood cells, etc. So now let's look at some of those specialized cells in the body. And there's going to be some other videos that you're going to be shown so that you can see these cells in action inside of your body. So again, a specialized cell is any type of cell in the body that you can name. And we already talked about some so far. So sperm cells are a big example of a specialized cell. Their job is to fertilize an egg. So let's think of some features that would be handy for it to do its job. One is that this is the only type of animal cell that has a flagella. That gives the cell the ability to move. Also, to operate that flagella, it's going to need a lot of ATP. So you see there that a sperm cell is going to have a lot of mitochondria to provide the energy for the flagella to move. Another feature is it's a very small cell. Usually big things don't move large distances, and so the smaller you are, the less energy it's going to take for you to get from point A to point B. There's other features that you don't have to necessarily list for me, but one is this head part that's going to penetrate the egg. It's pointed, so that allows it easier access to the egg. It also contains digestive enzymes on the surface of that head region of the fertilized, so the head region of the sperm cells. So it can digest that part of the cell that it has to in order to fuse with the egg. Red blood cells would be another example of a specialized cell that you can list. Its job is to carry oxygen. Now what's unique about these cells, or some features that will assist it in doing its job, is it doesn't have a nucleus. It did at one time, but the nucleus degrades, there's no organelles, there's no smooth ER, rough ER, but that makes more room inside for large amounts of a special protein called hemoglobin. We know hemoglobin's a protein because it ends in IN. And hemoglobin is the molecule that the oxygen can bind to. So the more hemoglobin that would be inside of a red blood cell, the more that it can bind to oxygen and then drop that oxygen off to the cells, the tissues that need it. We have cells in our pancreas that produce our digestive enzymes. So let's indicate these are enzymes that can digest our food. So it's the job of these cells to produce these enzymes and release them all day long. So if a cell needs to produce a lot of enzymes, it's going to need the cell parts that produce proteins or enzymes. It's going to have a lot more attached ribosomes so it can do its job, because the ribosomes will start to make the protein. The rough ER can modify those proteins, send them to the Golgi, and then the Golgi is tagging them and putting them in vesicles so those proteins can be released. So So compared to a skin cell that doesn't spend all day producing and releasing proteins, a pancreatic cell is going to have more of those structures needed to produce and release those proteins. We've already seen some videos on white blood cells. White blood cells will engulf foreign objects and destroy them. So to destroy them or digest what it's engulfing, they're going to have way more lysosomes than a different cell in your body that doesn't have to digest a lot of foreign particles. So white blood cells are going to have more lysosomes to digest things like bacteria and viruses that they ingest. Also, something that's a little bit different. This pancreatic cell is attached. The pancreatic cell is never going to move. It's attached and it's going to stay there in that part of your body. White blood cells are unique because they're not attached. They can move around in the body. They can change shape and they can slip through and squeeze through small places to get to areas that might have bacteria or viruses. We've seen lots of videos with ciliated cells that are moving mucus, or we have ciliated cells that can move an egg down the fallopian tube. And those cells can be found like in the airway, and you can see them right here. These would be our ciliated cells there. And in this situation, they are moving their cilia, and that's going to make the mucus flow. In this case, it would be coming up to our throat so that we can swallow and we can digest the mucus and all those particles that are now stuck to the mucus. Now, in addition, we have other cells that are not ciliated. They're called goblet cells. That would be a goblet cell right there. So you can name a goblet cell as being a special type of cell. And it's the job of the goblet cell to produce that mucus. Now, that mucus is mostly protein. So again, just like a pancreatic cell that's producing and releasing a lot of proteins, you would find a lot of attached ribosomes to the rough ER, and a lot of Golgi to tag those proteins, the mucin, to be released from the cell. So again, you should be able to provide examples of specialized cells, tell me what they do for the organism, and indicate what would be some structures that are unique to them, and how stem cells become specialized, or they differentiate into different types of the body. So when I ask you to define differentiation, that simply means whenever stem cells become specialized, they become one of the types of cells needed in the body.